workshop. How would the session flow? So the session would flow with few titles by this, so the background of this particular webinar, practices that are being used as a substitute to feedback, what would make up for the DNA of a feedback, and where do we actually, slip up in the process of feedback, which impacts or affects the perception of the feedback, and in totality, adversely impacts the outcome of the feedback. We'll also look at the strategies to prevent such pitfalls, and we'll form a modular course on an effective feedback. With that session flow, would like to make a statement with the help of few researches and the experiences that we have come across. Feedback in the Indian context, the power is yet to be optimally realized. We are far suboptimal in the utilization of the power of such a resource known as feedback. And therefore, I may say there are many reasons. The reality lies in the fact feedbacks are still far and few. One of the reasons could be I'm new to the organization and there's a tenured team member and I'm hesitating to initiate thinking that this feedback, which in my view is constructive, how it would be perceived. So just newness can be one particular reason. I'm tenured and I have been providing feedback for years together and I've seen good results. However, I'm also keen to know if I can still better the outcome. Third could be, and there could be many more. If I do provide feedback to someone, the results are predictable. But when I delegate this particular activity to a trusted person, the impact or the outcomes are mixed. Sometimes subnormal, sometimes suboptimal, sometimes fantastic. So they're a mixed one. And I would like to know, how do we understand the nitty-gritty and the pieces of feedback so that we can actually train people to do a better job of providing impactful feedback, which elicits commitment for change. Now, this session will have something or the other for all of us. So there are 4 stages any learner goes through in acquiring a skill, as we all know. When we see others doing it, like when we drive a vehicle, we put a L sticker when we are learning a vehicle. And we have learned it, but we have learned it only recently. Then also we do affix that particular sticker, reason being, we want to make the environment aware that I'm a new learner, be careful, I may make mistakes. But I'm very conscious of every aspect of driving the vehicle. So that's how we practice a skill when we are new to it. But when we are expert, what happens is there are simultaneously many things that we do. And therefore, the session would have relevance for all of us. Maybe if we are a new learner, maybe we are new in this particular relationship of a team leader and a team member and we are a new team leader. Or maybe we are tenured because, if you look at the analogy of driving a vehicle, the accidents a learner would make would have lesser impact on self and on others. But when an expert does that, it's a casualty. So therefore, it's always a good idea for even a tenured and experienced and so-called an expert to pull back oneself into the third stage of learning, which is when I'm newly skilled, when I'm very conscious about every aspect of that particular skill while applying it. And therefore, reducing the chances of casualty, I may say, if I may say, in an interaction like feedback. So look at communication interplay in the organization, because communication is being used in various forms, maybe coordination, informal communication, unidirectional authoritative communication, feedback, and leadership communication. The biggest space in the communication segment that we find is being occupied by coordination communication in the organizations, and the least being on feedback and contracting. Now, if we have to look at reasons that indicate at the suboptimal use of feedback. The reasons are very obvious in our day-to-day life in the organizational perspective. So there is a consistent good performer who turns into an average or poor performer, but never to resume back the benchmarks he or she has created in the organization. Why does that happen? So initially, there's a surprise when the good performer turns into an average performer. But later on, why do we think and why do we treat it as an accepted norm? People make commitments in meetings with no intentions to fulfill them and left from one particular review meeting to another review meeting. Another scenario, people do not own their responsibilities. Organization has to use power to make them do what is their role related duty. People retire on the job. So these are reasons good enough. And I have just shared few of the reasons which come to the surface. There are so many which indicate that there's a suboptimal use of feedback in organizations. I would like to have your feedback. And if I may make this statement, we can safely say that we can do much more with the power of feedback in the Indian industries. To sense if the statement echoes well with your experience, please show your thumb in the reaction. Let me see your thumb. That would help me know how many of us are, with us, and your experience sharing is going to be a value add for many of us. So if this echoes well with your environment, your experience, so I can see many people coming up with their thumbs up. Okay, is the sound a little better now? Show me your thumbs up if the sound is better. Okay, the sound is better. Fantastic. So we all agree that we can do much more with the power of feedback in organizations. And when the situations, as we narrated before, wherein the suboptimal use, or if one may say, sluggish use of feedback is there, what do people do? Do they hold back their observations, or do they find a via media to share? Okay, so some practice the approach of refraining from feedback. Some people decide to shelve the feedback completely. There are some other practices wherein indirect references are being made in informal meetings, for example, over lunch. And some people decide to write an email without having a face-to-face meeting with all the candid facts and figures written in the email and expected behaviors and expected actions. There are fewer practices. A combination of held back emotion and combination of held back observation is a volatile combination. And as would happen with volatile substances, when they come together, it makes for a small explosion. Outbursts is not uncommon, but it may not be common, if I may say or rephrase, but we do see outbursts. And it's equally true in our professional and personal life. But when it comes to professional interaction between a team leader and a team member, team leader's performance is dependent upon team members' performance. And how long a team leader will hold back a feedback which is affecting a team's performance and ultimately the team leader's performance. So therefore, at a point in time, the vent comes with a lot of emotions and it can be termed as an outburst. Now, I would like to have you participate, take a pause and think about a situation wherein we have given indirect reference, we have, given emotions along with the feedback as a vent, or we have, let's say, written an email instead of having a face-to-face, sometime or the other. So there is a self-assessment rating against 3 statements. So if we have done it out of the above mentioned actions at least once in our lifetime, one can assess self at A. If it is done for two or more actions at least once, one can self-assess at the level B. And if it is done more than 2 and more than twice during one's professional lifetime as a team leader, one can self-assess at the rating C. I have done it in all the 3 forms, and I am a human being like all of us. We make mistakes and we learn from it. And I would rate myself at C. I have written an email to a person whom the feedback did not work well. So I tried it once, I delegated the task to somebody else, and then decided to write an email, a very candid in my view. But put yourself into the shoes. What happens? So how many of you say, and what is your feedback? Let me look at the comments. Okay. So Atik is saying, yes, we have given the vent. Cyril is also showing thumbs up. Yes, we do that. Vinti is, okay, Vinti made a statement about sound. So feedback is coming that we do that. Aman Mishra is also there. All right, great. So the quick poll tells us sometime or the other, we have also found a via media of sharing our observations, sharing the remedial actions. But let us look at the other aspect. How effective this via media sharing is, and where does all these actions lead us to? They lead us to a situation wherein we only aggravate the already deteriorating situation. A vent with a lot of emotions will further sour the relationship. And when there is no acceptance of a team leader, even if the team leader has gold for the team member, the person would not even have a look at it. Email writing, put yourself into the shoes. How would a person perceive? I had a management trainee, and as I was sharing with you, 2 feedbacks and 1 mail, and after the 45 days of the mail, the person decided to leave the organization. That gave me a jolt and made me look at my feedback process and the whole activity once again. So do we need to do all these activities, the via media sharing? Answer is perhaps no, because there is no substitute to an actual face-to-face effective form of interaction, which is two-way, known as feedback. Quick reflection, slightly distant but related one. How many workshops on feedback and contracting that we would have seen in the organizational training calendars in the last 2 years? You can write in your comment box from 0 to whatever number you have seen in the last 2 years. It could be 0, it could be 1, 2, 3, it could be 4 or more. Let me see how many. So take a pause, think about it, and share how many times in the last 2 years in the training calendar that we have seen. Okay, so Amar is saying 2 times, 1 Atik, Sakshi 0, 2 Lakshman, Ananya is saying 2. So if you look at it, still far and few. The subject is important. We all agree. It's like a lubrication oil communicating with all the parts of the organs of the automobile. It is as crucial as a cog in the wheel, feedback and contracting. But how much importance organizations give when it comes to organizing planned training calendars? The answer is perhaps far and few. And that leads us to the next aspect of feedback. The DNA of feedback. So feedback essentially has 3 parts. three active pieces: observed areas, remedial steps, and the feedback process in action, that is the execution part. So the three active pieces of a feedback makes the DNA of a feedback. We all know about it. The issue is, where do we err? Where do we make those common mistakes? Is it at the input level? And the input, if I may say, is the observed gap areas and the remedial steps. And the process is the execution process when we actually communicate the feedback. So do we do well in both the aspects? Answer is perhaps if we were doing that, we can only improve. But still, a lot of research says most of the managers and team leaders do a very good job in understanding the gap areas of the team members. They do a very good, because they work day in and day out, they have risen from ranks, they have been through that particular path. So it's very easy for managers to look at the gaps which are affecting the team members' current performance and their development process to take up the high responsibility. They also have fantastic remedial steps. So where does the issue lie? Issue lies in the fact that the feedback input is not accepted by the team members in its totality. That's what the research says. And therefore the corresponding actions and the outcomes. So the issue doesn't lie with the input largely. So there's a comment coming up. How does one address unaccounted expectations which are not documented in the KRAs? Okay, so Vinti, we will address this, because I think during the process, we will have 10 minutes microphone access that I would request Rahul to give all of us. In the next 20 minutes or so, we will have a break, and then we will have a freewheeling discussion, and we'll try to address this. Thank you, Vinti. Fantastic thought. So the issue lies, how do we rejig the process? Should we reflect upon, and should we see where does the improvement is needed? Where is the improvement needed? So the issue is, it's not a machine that we are dealing with. We are actually looking at a commitment for change from a human being, and there lies the issue. The input could have brought output, desirable output, had it been only a data processing machine or a computer and automotive, wherein we knew what input is required and what output would come. Desirable and predictable output could have been, facilitated. The issue lies with the individuality of a human being. And the individuality of the human being poses individual personalities across, and the history that both the people share with each other. So, issue is, we are trying to influence the thoughts and actions of an individual. So the most important consideration also has to come in the form of considering the individuality of a human being. We may say pitfalls coming in the forms of individual mindsets, individual fears, apprehensions, trust, and not the least, not accepting the supervisor as a leader, as a mentor. There could be many more. So how do we prevent such kind of pitfalls? The starting point cannot be smaller, shorter, and alternative to knowing the persons in terms of his or her mindset, fears, apprehensions. Invest good time, plan it, share it with the team. There is no other shortcut. Until unless we give undivided attention to the human being, we will not be able to build the bridges of empathy, unconditional respect. All these aspects of empathy, unconditional respect, being non-judgmental, will help us know the mindset, fears, and apprehensions. And that's the first step. The other step could be parallel and simultaneous one, becoming a problem solver. A lot of troubleshooting is required in day-to-day work, We are not bothered with that. But wherever our team member gets stuck, we have to establish our credentials as an expert. And in that moment, we start gaining the acceptance of the team member. By knowing the person, we are enhancing the acceptance and openness. But by helping the other person in the time of need, particularly in the critical issues, we not only establish our leadership, we also establish our credentials that we can help the other person grow in the career because we know the way and we can show the way.